We're still in our GF1031 Southeast Madison.dwg file, and we've left it in the same state it was at the end of the last video. Now you'll notice we've got the 1 to 100 viewport and the 1 to 40 viewport of the restrooms there now. Now ideally I want all the dimension annotation in this particular layout on this sheet to be consistent, i.e. the text needs to be the same size and so on. This is where your annotative scaling comes in. So what we need to think about is annotative dimension style and annotation scale in the model tab. So let's jump back to the model tab now. If I hover over one of these dimensions going between the grids, you'll see there that they have the annotative symbol. That means that they are using an annotative dimension style. I'm going to click on one of the dimensions, right click and go to properties. So you'll see there, look, it's using a dim style of M arrowheads mm. It is annotative and it's using an annotative scale of 1 to 100. That's great because we want those particular dimensions to be in the 1 to 100 viewport. Let's close the properties palette, hit escape a couple of times. You'll notice that the annotation scale is preset at 1 to 100. Now the restrooms, that viewport is at 1 to 40, remember? We set that up at 1 to 40. So our annotation scale needs to be 1 to 40 to place annotation that we need on the restrooms viewport. So let's zoom in on the restrooms now. Get in close as well. Don't worry too much about how much detail you can see. We're going to place some simple dimensions. So we go to the annotation flyout here on the home tab on the ribbon. We check that we're using M arrowheads mm, which is our annotative dimension style. So that's great. We're using the right dimension style. We need to change our layer to our dimensions layer. So what are the dimensions on? Well, there it is there. A010 DDIM. That's the layer that you need to be on. Now, the good thing is we could go to the Annotate tab, and you'll notice that the dim layer override was already preset to the A010 DDIM layer anyway. So it didn't matter what our current drafting layer was. The dim layer override would have overridden the current layer anyway. We're just going to place 2 or 3 simple linear dimensions so that you get an idea of how annotative scaling works. So I'm going to go for linear on the flyout here, select linear, and they're going to be nothing special. I'm just going to zoom in and measure some cubicles. So I'm going to go from this endpoint snap here down to this endpoint snap here, and there's a 940 dimension there. And then what I'll do is I'll come in again, linear, and I'll get to the endpoint snap I use for that dimension, zoom out a bit, and we're going to come in all the way down to this endpoint here, using zoom and pan all the time, you'll notice, for accuracy. And then I'll use that endpoint on the arrowhead there, and there's my 2 dimensions placed neatly there. Now what I might do is do the same on the other side, in the other restroom. So again, linear. And again, I'm not worried about what you dimension at all. What I am worried about is that you're using the right annotation scale. So there's another 940 cubicle size there. And we'll do another linear one here. Let's come off of the same endpoint again like we did before. And I'll pop down to that endpoint there. There we go. And we'll just get that nicely lined up to there like that. So we've placed some dimensions now in the restrooms. Now this is where you can see annotative scaling at work. Can you see the 9754 overall dimension between the grid lines there? The text is bigger than the dimensioning in the restrooms. That's because they're using different annotation scales. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the clever bit. If I now go back to my ISO A1 landscape tab, the layout tab, you'll notice here, if I zoom in, can you see they all look the same size? If I pan across, can you see that those dimensions are the same size as those dimensions? So in your annotative dimension style, you set up all the sizes of the arrowheads, the dimension text, etc. And the annotation scale takes care of it in each specific scaled viewport. And that's how annotation scaling works. Make sure you double click on the wheel to zoom extents in your layout tab, jump back to the model tab, and again double click on the wheel to zoom extents.